Chapter 13. The Mafia chiefs of Sicily demanded a meeting with Don Croce. Though Don Croce was acknowledged as the chief among the chiefs, he did not rule them directly. They had their own empires. The Mafia was like one of those medieval kingdoms where powerful barons banded together to support the wars of their most powerful member, whom they acknowledged as their nominal ruler. But like those ancient barons, they had to be wooed by their king. They had to be rewarded with the spoils of war. Don Croce ruled them not by force, but by the power of his intelligence, his charisma, his lifelong acquisition of respect. He ruled by combining their divergent interests into one general interest, by which they all benefited. Don Croce had to be careful with them. They all had their private armies, their secret assassins, stranglers, poisoners, honorable wielders of straightforward death by the dreaded lupara. In that area their strength was equal to his. That was why the Don had wanted to enlist Turi Giuliano as his own personal warrior chief. These men were clever too, in their own right, some of them the most cunning men living in Sicily. They did not begrudge the Don the building of his power. They trusted and believed in him. But even the most intelligent man in the world can be wrong sometimes, and they believed that the Don's infatuation with Giuliano was the only failure that had emerged from the labyrinth of his mind. Don Croce arranged a sumptuous lunch for the 6 chiefs in the garden of the Hotel Umberto in Palermo, where secrecy and security were assured. The most fearful of these chiefs and the most outspoken was Don Ciano, who ruled the town of Bisacquino. He had agreed to speak for the others, and he did so with the harsh courtesy that was the rule of the friends at their highest level. "My dear Don Croce," Don Ciano said, "you know the respect we all have for you. It was you who resurrected us and our families. We owe you a great deal, so it is only to do you a service that we speak out now. This bandit Turi Giuliano has become too strong. We have treated him with too much deference. He is a mere boy, and yet he defies your authority and ours. He robs the jewels from our most illustrious clients. He abducts the olives, the grapes, the corn of our richest landowners. And now he shows us a final disrespect we cannot ignore. He kidnaps Prince Olorto, whom he knows to be under our protection. And yet you continue to treat with him. You continue to extend your hand in friendship. I know he is strong, but are we not stronger? And if we let him go his way, will he not grow stronger still? We all of us agree that now is the time to resolve this question. We must take all the measures possible to negate his strength. If we ignore his kidnapping of Prince Olorto, we will be the laughingstock of all Sicily." Don Croce nodded his head as if in agreement with all that had been said, but he did not speak. Guido Quintana, the least of the men present, said almost plaintively, "I am the mayor of Montelepre, and everybody knows I am one of the friends. But nobody comes to me for judgment or redress or gifts. Giuliano rules the town and permits me to live there on his sufferance so as to not provoke a quarrel with you gentlemen. But I cannot make a living. I have no authority. I am a mere figurehead. While Giuliano lives, the friends do not exist in Montelepre. I am not afraid of this lad. I faced him down once, before he became a bandit. I do not think him a man to be feared. If this council agrees, I will attempt to eliminate him. I have made plans, and I only await your approval to execute them." Don Pidu of Caltanissetta and Don Arzana of Piani de Greci nodded. Don Pidu said, "Where will be the difficulty? With our resources we can deliver his corpse to the cathedral of Palermo and go to his funeral and as we would to a wedding." The other chiefs, Don Marcuzzi of Villamura, Don Bucilla of Partenico, and Don Arzana voiced their approval. Then they waited. Don Croce lifted his massive head. His spike of a nose impaled them each in turn as he spoke. "My dear friends, I agree with everything you feel," he said. "But I think you underrate this young man. He is cunning beyond his years and perhaps as brave as any of us here. He will not be so easy to kill. Also, I see a use for him in the future, not just for myself, but for all of us. The communist agitators are whipping the people of Sicily into a madness that makes them expect another Garibaldi. And we must make sure that Giuliano is not flattered into being their savior. I do not have to tell you the consequences to us if those savages ever come to rule Sicily. We must persuade him to fight on our side. Our position is not yet so secure that we can afford to throw away his strength by assassinating him." The Don sighed, washed down a morsel of bread with a glass of wine, and mopped his mouth daintily with his napkin. "Do me this one favor. Let me make a last effort to persuade him. If he refuses, then do what you feel you must do. I will give you your answer within 3 days' time. Just let me make one last effort to come to a reasonable agreement." It was Don Ciano who first bowed his head in agreement. After all, what reasonable man would be so impatient to commit murder that he could not wait 3 days? When they left, Don Croce summoned Hector Adonis to his home in Villaba. The Don was peremptory with Adonis. "I have come to the end of my patience with your godson," he said to the little man. "He must now be with us or against us. The kidnapping of Prince Olorto was a direct insult to my person, but I am willing to forgive and forget. After all, he is young, and I remember when I was his age and I had his high spirits. As I have said always, I admire him for it. And believe me, I value his abilities. I would be overjoyed if he agreed to be my right hand, but he must recognize his place in the scheme of things. I have other chiefs who are not so admiring, not so understanding. I will not be able to hold them back. So go to your godson and tell him what I have told you, and bring me back his answer tomorrow at the latest. I can wait no longer." Hector Adonis was frightened. "Don Croce, I recognize your generosity in spirit and deed. But Turi is willful and, like all young men, too sure of his power. And it is true he is not altogether helpless. If he wars on the Friends, I know he cannot win, but the damage could be frightful. Is there some reward I can promise him?" The Don said, "Promise him this. He will have a high place in the Friends, and he will have my personal loyalty and my love. And after all, he cannot live in the mountains forever. There will come a time when he will wish to take his place in society, to live within the law in the bosom of his family. When that day comes, I am the only man in Sicily who can assure him his pardon, and it will be my greatest happiness to do so. I mean this sincerely." And indeed, when the Don spoke in this fashion, he could not be disbelieved. He could not be resisted. When Hector Adonis went up into the mountains to meet Giuliano, he was very troubled and frightened for his godson, and he resolved to speak frankly. He wanted Giuliano to understand that their love for each other came first, even above his allegiance to Don Croce. When he arrived, chairs and folding tables were set up at the edge of the cliff. Turi and Spanu sat alone. He said to Giuliano, "I must talk to you privately." Pisciotta said angrily, "Little man, Turi has no secrets from me." Adonis ignored the insult. He said calmly, "Turi can tell you what I tell him, if he likes. That is his affair. But I cannot tell you. I cannot take that responsibility." Giuliano patted Pisciotta's shoulder. "Spanu, leave us alone. If it's something you should know, I'll tell you." Pisciotta rose abruptly, gave Adonis a hard stare, and walked away. Hector Adonis waited for a long time. Then he began to speak. "Turi, you are my godson. I have loved you since you were an infant. I taught you, gave you books to read, helped you when you became an outlaw. You are one of the few people in the world who makes living worthwhile for me. And yet your cousin Spanu insults me without a word of reproach from you." Spanu said sadly, "I trust you more than I trust anyone except for my mother and father." "And Spanu?" Hector Adonis said reproachfully. "Has he grown too bloodthirsty for any man to trust?" Giuliano looked him in the eyes, and Adonis had to admire the serene honesty of his face. "Yes, I must confess. I trust Spanu more than I do you. But I have loved you since I was a little boy. You freed my mind with your books and wit. I know you've helped my mother and father with your money, and you have been a true friend in my troubles. But I see you entangled with the friends of the Friends, and something tells me that is what brings you here today." Once again, Adonis marveled at his godson's instincts. He presented the case to Turi. "You must come to an accommodation with Don Croce," he said. "Not the King of France, not the King of the Two Sicilies, not Garibaldi, not even Mussolini himself could ever completely crush the friends of the friends. You cannot hope to win a war against them. I beg you to come to an accommodation. You must bend your knee to Don Croce at the beginning, but who knows what your position will be in the future? I tell you this on my honor and on the head of your mother whom we both adore. Don Croce believes in your genius and bears the seed of a true love for your person. You will be his heir, the favored son. But for this time you must bow to his rule." He could see that Turi was moved by this and took him very seriously. Hector Adonis said passionately, "Turi, think of your mother. You cannot live in the mountains forever, risking your life to see her a few days every year. With Don Croce you can hope for a pardon." The young man took some time to collect his thoughts and then spoke to his godfather in a slow, serious tone. "First of all, I wish to thank you for your honesty," he said. "The offer is very tempting, but I am now committed to free the poor in Sicily, and I do not believe the Friends have that same aim. They are servitors of the rich and the politicians in Rome, and these are my sworn enemies. Let us wait and see. Certainly I kidnapped Prince Olorto and stepped on their toes, but I continue to permit Quintana to live, and he is a man I despise. I forbear out of respect for Don Croce. Tell him that. Tell him that, and tell him that I pray for the day when we can become equal partners, when our interests will not conflict. As for his chiefs, let them do what they will. I have no fear of them." It was with a heavy heart that Hector Adonis brought this answer back to Don Croce, who nodded his leonine head as if he had expected nothing else. In the following month 3 separate attempts were made on Giuliano's life. Guido Quintana was allowed the first pass. He planned with an elaborateness that was worthy of the Borgias. There was a road that Giuliano frequently used when he made a sortie out of the mountains. Alongside the road were lush fields which Quintana filled with a great flock of sheep. Guarding these sheep were the 3 harmless-looking shepherds, natives of the town of Corleone and old friends of Quintana. For almost a week, when Giuliano was sighted coming down the road, the shepherds would greet him respectfully and in the old tradition ask for his hand to kiss. Giuliano engaged them in friendly conversations. Shepherds were often part-time members of his band, and he was always looking for new recruits. He did not feel himself in any danger since he nearly always traveled with bodyguards and often with Pisciotta, who was worth at least 2 men. The shepherds were unarmed and wore light clothing that could not conceal weapons. But the shepherds had lupare and ammunition belts strapped to the bellies of some sheep in the middle of the flock. They waited for an opportunity when Giuliano would be alone and not so heavily guarded. But Pisciotta had wondered about the friendliness of these shepherds, the sudden appearance of this flock of sheep, and he made inquiries through his network of informants. The shepherds were identified as assassins employed by Quintana. Pisciotta wasted no time. He took 10 members of his own private band and rounded up the 3 shepherds. He questioned them closely about who owned the sheep, how long they had been shepherds, where they had been born, the names of their mothers and fathers, their wives and children. The shepherds answered with seeming frankness, but Pisciotta had the proof they were lying. A search uncovered the weapons hidden in the fleece of the animals. Pisciotta would have executed the impostors, but Giuliano vetoed this. After all, no harm had been done, and the real villain was Quintana. So the shepherds were made to drive the flock of sheep into the town of Montelepre. And there in the main square they were made to sing out, "Come claim your gift from Turi Giuliano, a lamb from every household, a blessing from Turi Giuliano." And then the shepherds would do the slaughtering and skinning for any who requested such services. "Remember," Pisciotta told the shepherds, "I want you to be as obliging as the Swedish shopgirl in Palermo, as if you were getting a commission. And give my regards and thanks to Guido Quintana." Don Ciano was not so elaborate. He sent 2 men as emissaries to bribe Passatempo and Terranova to act against Giuliano. But Don Croce could not comprehend the loyalty Giuliano inspired even in such a brute as Passatempo. Again Giuliano vetoed death, but Passatempo himself sent the two emissaries back with the mark of the bastinado. The third attempt was made by Quintana again, and it was this attempt that made Giuliano lose his patience. A new priest came to Montelepre, a traveling friar bearing various religious stigmata on his body. He said Mass at the local church one Sunday morning and showed his holy wounds. His name was Father Dodana, and he was a tall, athletic man who walked so briskly that his black cassock swirled in the air above his cracked leather shoes. His hair was a whitish blonde, his face wrinkled and brown as a nut, though he was still a young man. Within a month he was a legend in the town of Montelepre, for he was not afraid of hard work. He helped the local farmers gather their crops. He chastised mischievous children in the streets. He called on sick old women in their homes to confess their sins. And so one Sunday when he was standing outside the church after saying Mass, Maria Lombardo Giuliano was not surprised that he stopped her and asked if he could do something for her son. "Surely you worry about his immortal soul," Father Dodana said. "The next time he comes to visit you send for me, and I will hear his confession." Maria Lombardo had no love for priests, though she was religious. But this man impressed her. She knew Turi would never make a confession, but perhaps he would have use for a holy man sympathetic to his cause. She told the priest that her son would be informed of his offer. Father Dodana said, "I would even go into the mountains to help him. Tell him that. My only business is to save souls in danger of hell. What a man does is his own business." Turi Giuliano came to visit his mother a week later. She urged him to see the priest and make a confession. Perhaps Father Dodana would give him a holy communion. She would be easier in mind if he were shriven of his sins. Turi Giuliano was very interested, which surprised his mother. He agreed to see the priest, and he sent Aspano Pisciotta to the church to escort him back to the Giuliano home. As Giuliano had suspected, when Father Dodana appeared, he moved too much like a man of action. He was too vigorous and he was too sympathetic to Giuliano's cause. Father Dodana said, "My son, I will listen to your confession in the privacy of your bedroom, and then I will give you communion. I have all my things here." He patted the wooden case under his arm. "Your soul will be as pure as your mother's, and if some evil befalls you, you will go straight to heaven." Maria Lombardo said, "I'll make coffee and some food for you and the Holy Father." She went into the kitchen. "You can confess me here," Turi Giuliano said with a smile. Father Dodana glanced at Aspano Pisciotta. "Your friend will have to leave the room," he said. Turi laughed. "My sins are public. They appear in every newspaper. My soul is pure otherwise, except for one thing. I must confess to a suspicious nature, so I would like to see what is in that box you carry under your arm." "The waters of Holy Communion," Father Dodana said. "I will show you." He started to open the box, but at that moment Pisciotta pressed the pistol against the back of his neck. Giuliano took the box away from the priest. At that moment they looked into each other's eyes. Giuliano opened the box. A dark blue automatic nestled in a bed of holy velvet glinted up at him. Pisciotta saw Giuliano's face go pale. His eyes with their silver circles go black with a subdued fury. Giuliano closed the box and looked up at the priest. "I think we should go to church and pray together," he said. "We will say a prayer for you, and we will say a prayer for Quintana. We will pray to the good Lord to take the evil out of Quintana's heart and the greediness out of yours. How much did he promise to pay you?" Father Dodana was not worried. The other would-be assassins had been let off so lightly. He shrugged and then smiled. "The government reward and 5 million lira extra." "A good price," Giuliano said. "I don't blame you for trying to make your fortune, but you deceived my mother, and that I can't forgive. Are you a real priest?" "Me?" Father Dodana said contemptuously. "Never, but I thought no one would suspect me." The three of them walked down the street together, Giuliano carrying the wooden box. Peschiera trailing behind. They entered the church. Giuliano made Father Dodana kneel at the altar, then took the automatic out of the wooden box. "You have a minute to say your prayers," Giuliano said. The next morning, Guido Quintana rose to go down to the cafe for his morning coffee. When he opened the door of his house, he was startled by a massive shadow blocking off the usual early morning sunlight. In the next instant, a huge, roughly made wooden cross tumbled inside, almost knocking him down. Nailed to that cross was the bullet-ridden body of Father Dodana. Don Croce pondered these failures. Quintana had been warned. He must devote himself to his duties as mayor, or the city of Montelepre would be forced to govern itself. It was clear Giuliano had lost patience and might launch an all-out war against the Friends. Don Croce recognized the sureness of a master in Giuliano's retribution. Only one more strike could be made, and it must not fail. Don Croce knew that he must, finally, take a stand. And against his judgment and his true will, he sent for his most reliable assassin, a certain Stefan Andolini, also known as Fra Diavolo.